Hey folks, Mr. Howard here with some terminology that you need to have. You want to add this to your literary terms notebooks that you should have been building from the beginning of the class. In order to understand Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, we need to add some new terms to our list and to our understanding. We're also going to have to re-access some of our old ones because the old terms don't go away simply because we're done with Anglo-Saxon literature. We have to carry that knowledge through and apply it to the new things. That's why we start with the earliest stuff and we move to the later stuff, because the later stuff relies on the developments of the earlier stuff to make sense. So, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is an example of a medieval romance. A medieval romance is a new genre, just like heroic epic was a genre, medieval romance is a genre. And you need to know the traits. So a medieval romance is a story set in the Middle Ages, with kings, queens, right underneath my picture here, with kings, queens, knights, ladies, magic, monsters, etc. And a story set in the Middle Ages, which includes a romantic hero, more on that in a second, and a test of love. So, romantic hero is another term we're going to get into. But basically, what do I mean by a test of love? Generally speaking, there's sort of two types of tests of love that your romantic heroes are subjected to. One is, proving themselves worthy of somebody else's love. So they'll be in love with, a princess or something. And so they'll have to go on some sort of a quest to prove their love to that princess. The other is the kind that we're going to get in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is when a protagonist, a main character, has to resist forbidden love. Like there's this relationship that they want to be in, but they can't because the girl's married, or some other reason. It's they're dating their best friend. It's like the song Jesse's Girl. That's his best friend's girlfriend, and he can't do anything about it. But he's like torn up inside because he wishes he had Jesse's girl. No, all right, fine. But that's sort of the forbidden love aspect. So it's one or the other of those that is the test of love. So, if you see kings, queens, now, by the way, great example of a medieval romance, Shrek. I'm not kidding. Look at it. Shrek. Kings, Lord Farquaad. Queens, knights, ladies, magic, monsters, and ogre. Like a romantic hero. I don't know if you can argue that Shrek's a romantic hero, but he definitely undergoes a test of love. Like the whole story is a medieval romance and a retelling of one. And so, the King Arthur cycle is full of this stuff. And I'm going to talk about that in my next lecture so that you can sort of place where this belongs in the King Arthur story. But that's your first definition. Second definition is medieval romantic hero. I say medieval romantic hero because there's another type of romantic hero that shows up during the romantic period of literature, and I'm not gonna get into that. A medieval romantic hero is generally, and you probably guessed this, a person of high social status. Again, in the Middle Ages, all of these stories were written for the literate. The literate were the kings and queens and lords, the people on the top of the pyramid. And so they focus on those people. The main characters are those people. They're the kind of people those nobility would relate to. And so it's a person of high social status again, who follows the code of chivalry and undergoes a test. Whoa, I'm going off the edge of the page. And undergoes a test of love. I'm going to put a colon here and we'll put the two types. Either A, proving himself to a lover by completing a dangerous quest, or B, I think I need a comma there, or B, in this case, resisting forbidden love. So we've got that kind of a challenge going on. Now, there are variations on this. You do occasionally have a medieval romantic hero whose love is not being tested for a woman, but his brotherhood or his camaraderie with another knight is the love that's being tested, the friendship. Another test of love might be religious, your love of God. In fact, there's a whole series of medieval stories called the Quest of the Holy Grail that Monty Python's Holy Grail makes fun of. But these knights are their piety, their love of God and the Christian faith is being tested by their travels. Like the Grail quest is a quest to prove that you love God enough to hold the object that caught the blood of, or that Jesus drank from and then caught his blood at the crucifixion, so there's this, there's different ways that you can interpret the quest of love. Generally speaking, the test of love is a woman and a man. I mean, that's the way most medieval romances are written. Tristan and Isolde, or Lancelot and Guinevere, or in this case, Sir Gawain and the Lady. There's a lot of these stories, and they follow predictable patterns. So that's a medieval romantic hero in a medieval romance. I don't want you getting the idea when we throw the word romance around that we're talking about, like those kinds of novels in the grocery store that have half naked guys on and unfortunate scenes in them. That's not the kind of romance we're dealing with. This is high school and it's PG. So don't worry about that. But there is definitely going to be an element that Beowulf didn't have, which is romance, love and romantic love. So numerology, this is a new one for you. And it's something that's really important in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So numerology is essentially a symbolic system of numbers in which numbers have consistent, I hate to use the word symbolic again, symbolic meanings. Right, so this was really big in the Middle Ages. What am I struggling with here? If only I could spell in a consistent way. The Middle Ages were really big on numerology. It turns out that especially medieval Christians felt like that God had a plan when he made the world, and the plan was called math. And if you could understand the right combinations of numbers and their meanings, then, like the meaning of life and the meaning of the world would open up to you. And it became this branch of what you might call a pseudoscience. It was called numerology, which had to do with like opening the Bible and trying to find commonalities and meanings for numbers and assigning them. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is written by a priest who was definitely into numerology. And so let me give you some medieval numerology examples that will fit with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Let's look at the number 1. The number 1 was the number of God, because there is only one God. And the number 3 was the Trinity, right? Because, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost were connected to the Trinity. So they're all religious, and they all have symbols attached to them. So number 4. In Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, number 4 represents a number of different things. It's generally associated with Earth. Why is it associated with Earth? Well, because in Earth we have 4 directions. North, south, east, and west. We have 4 seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, and winter, and there's these 4s associated with Earth. But in this case, it also is associated with the human life cycle. Yeah. Why? Well, because since the beginning of poetry, we have always associated the seasons with the human life cycle. Like you're born, and that's a springtime of your life, your youth, when you're happy and cheerful and everything's great, and then you move into your prime, which is sort of summer. Things are still pretty good. Then fall is your old age. Things aren't as good as they used to be. You're sort of collecting your harvest, so to speak. The leaves fall from the tree and litter the ground, and then you hit old age and die in winter. Winter is death. Right. And Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is actually a story that's in 4 parts. And these 4 parts can be interpreted allegorically. Like, on one hand, the story takes place over the course of a year, right? And with 4 parts, it's sort of following the seasons. You go from New Year's Day when it starts, the very beginning of a year, all the way until New Year's Day the next year when it ends. And so it follows the seasons. But allegorically, it's going to represent the life cycle of a human being, and it's going to represent the life cycle of any human being. So we're going to follow this knight's story about, his year, but it's going to be about you and your life and the decisions you make. And there's this complicated thing that goes on. And, you pay attention to the fours, and it helps you understand what's going on there. So that would be a good example. Number 5 is, and of course, you get into numerology with these medieval priests and clerics and stuff, and they would look at, okay, 3 is the Trinity, and 4 is Earth. If you multiply 3 times 4, you get 12. The number of the disciples, the Trinity on earth. Oh my God, right? And you can sort of see how they do this, or like mental gymnastics and math, and put important values to numbers that maybe they don't deserve or whatever. It also explains some of our not metric system, like the imperial system measurements, and why we have weird things that are in 12s. Like, why would you measure by 12? Well, numerology. Anyway, 5 is an important number in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight as well. 5 has sort of 2 meanings. Humanity. That's, 5 is the number of humanity. Why? Well, because we have a bunch of 5s. We've got 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes on each foot. If you put your arms out and your feet out, you look like a little star. You got 1, 2, 3, and then each leg is 4, 5. So they're sort of like, we're pentangular, if you will, in our organization as human beings. So we got all these 5s. They also, you got 5 holes in your face, 2 eyes, 2 nose holes, and your mouth. That's 5, right? And so these medieval people started seeing 5s everywhere. Oh, I forgot one for 4. There's 4 directions. There's 4 seasons. No, I lied. No, 5s. Human beings have 5 senses. Right, that's what I was looking for. So you have smell, sight, taste, touch, hearing. So there's a 5 with the way that we sense the world around us. Oh, I did. I knew I forgot one here. They used to think that there were 4 bodily humors. So there's a bunch of different things associated. Oops, I guess I can't make it any bigger. So 5 is associated with humanity. I'll just put a colon here, 5 senses, 5 fingers, etc. The other thing that 5 is associated with is chivalry. And it's associated with chivalry because of the 5 pillars of chivalry. We talked about those in the last lecture, which are, faith, honor, courtesy, humility, and purity. Right, and so the idea of a star is really important. It's actually going to be a symbol that shows up in the story. Human beings as little stars, but chivalry as a star with 5 points, right? Faith, honor, courtesy, humility, and purity being those 5 points around the star. And, a star is important because it represents guidance. If you're lost at sea, how do you travel? By the stars. And so there's going to be a lot of sort of star symbolism, but it's connected with this idea of 5s. And humanity, of course, is important because Christ was like the human incarnation of God, and he was crucified, and there's a lot of connection that the religious author is going to put into the number 5. So other numbers that are important, I don't want to go on too long about this. 7 is an interesting number because it's associated with luck. Lucky number 7, it's still associated with luck, but it was also associated with purity. I think because 7 is one of those prime numbers that can't be divided by anything but 1. I think that's sort of their ideology behind it. So let me roll down here a little bit. Another important number in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is 9. 9 was the number of perfection. And why was 9 the number of perfection? Well, it's essentially the Trinity times the Trinity. But they came to this idea of perfection basically because of the times tables. Let me throw some times tables in here. Right, so they these times tables. 1 times 9, of course, is 0, 9. I guess I need equal signs here. And then 2 times 9 is 18, and 3 times 9 is, I'm going to pause this and just fill them all in for you so you don't have to listen to me do this all. All right, there you go. So medieval numerologists looked at things like this and they were like, wait a second, there's something crazy about nines. And there is. I mean, let's be honest. There's like that finger thing. I'm not going to worry about teaching you. But when you start looking at the nines times tables, like 1 times 9 is 0, 9, right? And 2 times 9 is 1, 8. And then 2, 7. Wait a second. We're seeing a pattern here. It goes 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And the other side counts up. And so like they're inverses of each other. So this one's 09 and this one's 90. And, like it's all crazy. And then wait a minute. 0 plus 9 is 9. 1 plus 8 is 9. 2 plus 7 is 9. 3 plus 6 is 9. And so they started looking at stuff like this and they're like, oh my God, it's the perfect number. Why is it the perfect number? Well, it's the Trinity times the Trinity is like God times himself, right? And so whatever. Nines are big in the story as well. So 3s are big, 9s are big, and they all, relate to some meaning as the story goes on. 13 is generally associated with bad luck. And so there's other numbers too, but I don't need to belabor the fact. I just want you to sort of learn these things and look for numbers where they show up in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And in fact, in all medieval literature and other, medieval influenced literature. For example, if you read The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien uses numerology throughout that whole thing that he learned from his study of Anglo-Saxon literature and medieval literature in general. He was also an expert on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. He did a lecture on it, which is totally worth watching. Maybe I'll see if I can find an audio copy of that and give it to you as bonus material next week. That'd be cool. Last thing you need to learn is quatrains. It turns out that Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is mostly written in alliterative verse, and we'll talk about that in my next lecture. But that it does start transitioning to, other medieval style literature. Now, see that 4-line section right there in the middle? That's what's called a quatrain. I can't read it because it's facing the camera, but whatever his land, he seemed a matchless prince meant to attack in the center of battle. That's not a particularly good one. If you get into the early parts of the book, the translation is better. But quatrains are 4 lines that share a rhyme scheme. Right, and so you got 4 lines, and generally speaking, there's different ways that these lines can rhyme. A B A B, A B C B, A B A. There's lots of various combinations. The one thing it can't be is A A B B. If it's A A B B, it's 2 couplets. It's 2 pairs of rhyming lines, and we're going to get into couplets with Chaucer, but. There are these 4-line sections. So as we read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and normally I could just have you look in your book while I'm giving this lecture. You don't have the book. It makes it complicated. But let's take a look at one right here at the beginning. It goes on through alliterative verse, and suddenly it breaks into rhyme. And these rhymes are called quatrains. Yeah, here we go. So, you're reading along and maybe you can hear the alliteration here. Then laced with an elaborate knot and strung with dozens of bright gold bells that rang as he rode, and rider and horse, stranger than anything seen on earth before that day, suddenly breaks into a quatrain. He seemed to glow like lightning, they say. Who were there, who could know the force of his blows? So we've got day and say and glow and know, and so you end up with this rhymey thing that suddenly happens in the middle of the poem. And it's in a quatrain. It's in this 4-line rhyming group, which is a new thing. Anglo-Saxon poetry had no rhyme whatsoever. So you should be able to identify the quatrains, the 4-line rhyming groups. And lots of things are written in quatrains. So it's something that you want to keep in mind as you continue to read poetry and things in English, because quatrains are never going to go away. from here on out. It's just something that's stable. All right, other terms I want you to keep in mind, and I'm not going to write down definitions of because you already have them. But an ideal is an important term for you here. If you recall, Beowulf is an ideal. Chivalry is also an ideal, as I mentioned before. And our protagonist is going to try and live up to the ideal of chivalry and fail ultimately. Quest. Sir Gawain is going to be going on a quest. It's not going to prove his heroism. It is, I guess, but it's also going to prove his love, right? It's a quest of love, and it's his chivalry. So we got to look at the quest. Divine intervention. You better believe this is a religious story about a knight, and he is going to experience divine intervention as the story goes on. You should be aware of when and where that happens, how God reaches down and helps him on his quest. Allegory. We have not left the Middle Ages behind, and so allegory is still super present. This story takes place in 4 parts. Each part is a season. It represents the human life cycle and is trying to teach you, the reader, something about how to exist in the world and how to be a chivalrous person. All of that is going to be symbolic throughout. So there's tons of symbols, stars and nature and various things, and I'll go over the symbolism as you go through, but you got to pay attention. The symbolism is the key to the allegory. If you can identify the symbols, if you can identify the numbers, then you can understand what the author is trying to do. Tone doesn't go away. We're going to have different tones. Different characters are going to have different attitudes, and you want to pay attention to that. Theme. We'll talk about the themes in the next lecture, but there's definitely, you want to keep an eye on theme as we go through. Some of our Anglo-Saxon themes still continue. There's a little bit of civilization versus nature. There's a little bit of Christianity versus paganism in these pages, but chivalry is your main theme, that functions throughout the entire thing. Alliteration and alliterative verse have not gone away. This is primarily written in alliterative verse with these small, weird quatrains that are called bob and wheels. I don't know why I know that. I just do. That show up throughout the entire thing. So you'll want to keep an eye on that as well. All right, I'm going to call this lecture done and save it. Thanks for listening.